My name's John, and my wife and I and our four kids have been 100% estranged from my wife's family for the last 3.5 years. As we look back and reflect on, what happened that led to this moment, um, hindsight is 2020, and there's things that we've learned. And so I wanted to share one story and then kind of a lesson that came from it that we both learned through the process. So we come from a family of about 40 people on my wife's side, and there are lots of cousins. And my oldest daughter once went to a sleepover at grandma and grandpa's house, and all of her girl cousins were there. And they've done this often. And she came home from that house concerned. And she came to tell us that, throughout the sleepover, that some of her cousins had been bragging about stealing from a local gas station. They were also talking about things that they were doing with boys that made her pretty uncomfortable, and they were listening to music that didn't align with the values that we're trying to teach in our home. So we were really proud of her for coming and talking to us. I mean, that's what every parent would hope that their kids would do. And before I share kind of the rest of the story, I want to just be super clear. This isn't about me judging the cousins. Kids make mistakes. We all know this. We all did things growing up that we wish that we hadn't done. What I'm wanting to share is, what happened after that fact. And, my daughter was not gossiping. She wasn't trying to get anyone in trouble. She was simply concerned and she wanted some guidance from us. So my wife approached her mom, and my wife is the youngest of seven kids. And she approached her mom, and she simply shared with us that Lily had kind of shared this experience she had. And at first, my mother-in-law seemed pretty upset too. She seemed disappointed. She seemed concerned about what had happened. But a few days later, she came back to my wife and said something that completely caught her off guard. She said, "Well, Ashley, the problem is that Lily is a tattletale." And when she shared that, my wife was just stunned because suddenly nobody was talking about the stealing. Nobody was talking about the concerning behavior. They weren't talking about the things that had happened at the sleepover. The focus had shifted completely onto the child who spoke up about it. And so, looking back, I think that's one of the most common patterns in unhealthy family systems. The person who shines a light on a problem becomes the problem. The person who tells the truth becomes the troublemaker. The person who raises a concern becomes the one everyone is concerned about. And psychologists sometimes call this DARVO. So, what DARVO stands for is deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. So, instead of dealing with the uncomfortable truth, the attention gets redirected towards the person who exposed it. But I think there's an even deeper lesson here. Healthy families, they value truth more than they do comfort. Unhealthy systems often value comfort more than truth. Because if the truth threatens the image of the family, the harmony of the group, or the way things have always been done, the easiest thing to do is simply to blame the messenger. And as a parent, the one thing I never want my children to believe is that they should feel ashamed for bringing concerns to us. I don't want them to hide things. I don't want them to protect appearances. I want them to know they can tell the truth. Because the goal isn't to raise tattletales. The goal is to raise truth tellers. And healthy families make room for truth, even when it's uncomfortable. So this is just one experience of many as we've kind of like put the pieces of the puzzle together. And as we've been able to reflect and learn as to why the system just felt off and why we no longer felt comfortable being in the system and why we needed to remove ourselves. Have you ever had an experience like this with DARVO? Would love to know in the comments.